ultimately, we're making this not for the director or not for the editor. You're making it for an audience, particularly when it comes to script and when you're cutting the film for the first time and looking at structure. What does the audience want at that particular moment?
This is Ela Thier of the Independent Film School interviewing filmmakers whose work premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. Links below this video to join us for the many free trainings that we offer. Hello, I'm here with Steve O'Connell, editor of Flora Son, which I got to watch in Toronto and really love. So funny and poignant. And it's a musical of sorts, like a modern musical, really fresh, interesting love story that's so rooted in character. So you edited this film.
Is that an accusation?
Even the editor on this film has a sense of humor.
I did. I had the honor of editing this film. Yeah, we shot it last summer, but summer 22, and we finished it in a bit of a rush. About 5 days before Sundance, we finished mixing it. And so yeah, it was a bit of a hastily post-produced film.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to start with what you love about editing, or do you want to start with the challenges of it? Maybe we start with what you like about it.
Well, I'll do it 2 in 1. It's
Okay.
what I like is the challenges. I think that's what we all like as craftspeople, is that challenge, and that's where we get our hit of dopamine creatively. Not to be pretentious in any way, but to draw an analogy of a sculptor, with a big block of marble. It's just like, you got to make something out of this. You've got to make a shape. You've got to create a form that people will want to see. How are you going to go about it? And that is the challenge, and that's what I love.
It's a great metaphor, because with a block of marble, you start with the rough contours and then you get more and more fine-tuned and more
yeah,
detail.
I mean, it's
really nice metaphor for it.
I think being a sculptor is a far more difficult job, but so we're being a bit lofty with that comparison. So that's the caveat there. But it is like when you've got a script, you've got dailies, as you would call them in the States, in North America. You've got a big square or rectangular block that has just nothing to it, and really, your dailies are a clue every day to what it might be. And that process over a shoot is a process of really standing back and seeing what it's got to offer. It's a very special, kind of creatively sacred process, I find, where you get intimate with the material that you're going to be. It's like an arranged marriage or something. You're going to get to know these scenes inside out. So how you greet that material, how you process it, how you deal with it, how you organize it, down to the practical, how you put it into bins and organize it. To me, the ultimate joy in filmmaking is when an assistant says scene 27 is in, it's binned, it's ready to go, here's the notes, and you got a big pot of coffee, and you turn your phone off, and you got a notebook, and you pull the blinds, you sit down, and you just watch. And that'll never happen again, where you watch material for the first time, where you have that first most important reaction, that instinct. We all talk about the instinct that drives us as editors. That's probably the most precious kind of tool that we have.
That's interesting. Yeah, speaking of this instinct, it's a nice way to describe it. I teach directing, and one of the things that I say to directors is a lot of us, when we're starting out, right, we're working with micro budgets or working with whatever we have, and so we are happy to find whoever we're able to find. And the thing that I always say is, yes, do that, except when it comes to the editor. Because there's the movie you write, there's the movie you shoot, and then there's the movie you edit, which is the final product. That's what people are going to see. And in my experience directing, the editor is the one place where I can't cut corners. It has to be someone that I really can collaborate with and understands the spirit of the film. And is really a co-creator in the film. I'm wondering about any advice you might have to directors about choosing an editor and about working with the editor. What is it that you'd want directors to know about thinking about their editors?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It takes a very specific skill to put aside your own opinions as an editor and to realize that what your job is to enable a director's vision and to be the midwife for their vision, their story. And I think what a director has to understand is they have to see that. It's not about the software that they're using. It's not about their setup or how groovy their cutting room is, or even what they've done before, as much as, what they're like, what they're, is there chemistry? It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be jumping on top of each other. It just has to be someone who can really, who can make the best of the shortcomings, who can embellish what's really good already, who can approach what's perfectly fine the way it is, and who can enhance what needs work. I think it's much more of an emotional kind of interaction initially.
Yeah.
Putting pictures together is quite straightforward. Everybody can do it. Kids are doing it on their phones, and it's great. It's been democratized to the moon and back in terms of that. So the craft is a little bit, not that it's overblown or overrated. It's in flux, and your journey is about trying to execute that story. And, craft is critical, but in order to be able to unlock the craft, you have to unlock the person and to know that there isn't a barrier there. So I think that understanding is like, just tell me more about yourself. Tell me, what do you like to listen to? What do you do at the weekends?
It's so interesting you're saying that. It's, as I listen to you, I'm thinking about the fact that, I watched a lot of the films that premiered in Toronto this year. And if we were talking and I didn't know which of the films you edited, I would have guessed it. I can tell from your personality, from how you talk, from your sense of humor, that you're clearly the Flora Son editor.
Okay.
The personality of the film just matches you. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've done some really dark stuff as well, and
there are very dark undertones to this film. I mean, it's a comedy. It's
I mean, look, it's about unlocking what the director, and in this case, John was the writer as well. So it's really about trying to tap into that. And, if your personality grates with that kind of story, it's going to be a little bit more tricky. But also depends on what kind of director that is. I mean, like, I'm working with a director now who really likes to be right here by my side 24/7. John is much more, and he gets what he wants. John is the opposite. He likes to come in only when it's necessary and expects you to bring the film to a place before he does that. And it's almost like you've got so many bites of the cherry with him, where you have to bring it, you have to do a lot of advanced thinking and plotting in your head about what he would want, finding more and more about the story, where it came from, what he was trying to say. He's very collaborative, very engaging with actors and with crew. He's interested in people transcending what's on the page to try and extract in a more defined way what it was in his head that drove him to write the script, if that makes any sense.
My sense about directing is that the more confident you are in your vision, the more interested you become in collaborating. It takes confidence to want to solicit the best out of people to arrive at something together.
I think it takes a certain amount of courage and trust. I think I've found trust kind of begets trust. Trust is really incredible, and it's a massive facet of John's attitude, and people around him deliver because that trust is there. It mightn't be warranted, but all of a sudden, when you are entrusted, you tend to go, oh, someone's trusting me. I'm going to run with this. And you end up possibly going further. I certainly do. It opens up possibilities, and that's quite refreshing.
I love these tips that as a director, trusting people is what's going to draw out their best. And as someone serving a director, not being yes man, but being willing to say what if and and bring your ideas out. I'm wondering.
The thing is, ultimately, we're making this not for the director or not for the editor. You're making it for an audience. And with Flora, I was very pushy and very obsessive about the audience and how they were going to feel. And that all of a sudden, that's great, because if you use that as a mantra, you're putting egos to one side for a while. And so I think it's a great way of neutralizing that sense of expectation and of pressure and of ego, and going, okay, what are they, particularly when it comes to script and when you're cutting the film for the first time and looking at structure, what does the audience want at that particular moment?
Can I ask you, Steve, you've been editing for decades. Looking back, what advice would you give your young self? You're 20 years old. What advice would you give that guy?
I wouldn't change a thing. So it wouldn't be anything different. When you say advice, it's really, I'm trying to imagine what I said to myself at the time, which was just to pursue your gut feeling and to be true to that. But that sounds a bit kind of Hallmark cardy, kind of, just, follow your dreams. I don't think it's follow your dreams, actually. It's just follow your reality. It's follow that gut instinct and listen to it. Maybe there were times where I was too pushy. And with hindsight, I would just say surrender a little bit more, just kind of maybe let it all happen more. Because what I've found is the moment I decided to step back and not be as obsessive or not make such big efforts to meet directors, to get scripts, to get interviews, to be in the right place at the right time, the more I pull back from that, the more things quite magically, as they do. Personally, I think about the energy you put out there and your internal intention. You're not forcing anything on anybody, but just what do you want to happen. And by eliminating options is a really good thing in some ways. Like going, well, I don't want to make that kind of a film. What you're doing is you're clearing the air a little bit and kind of going, I know what I don't want. And then all of a sudden, you're just being true to yourself. And then stuff that wasn't there becomes more visible in the foreground, I think. It's simply a matter of that.
Well, your answer here about following your compass and saying no to things and the hustle and the trying to build this vocation, it leads me to my last question for you, which is your recommendations about how to forge new relationships, new creative relationships. How do you recommend people go about that?
I think that's a very tricky question because everybody's circumstance is different. I'm still in that storm where I've had the good fortune of working with a couple of directors over 30 years more than once. So I've just hit it off with people. They're people who I just like and they like me. And that's been more important to me than having film that was nominated for an Academy Award and I was, 20 years ago, if that had happened. I would gladly take what I've experienced instead because they've been fruitful relationships. So I think if anything, it's looking for people who are interesting rather than the people who are going to be big, because I think it's much, much more about relationships. And that involves finding people who are like-minded or people who you get on with.
Oh, it's such a great tip. Yeah. It's not about the pedigree. It's about enjoying the work.
Well, I just think if you kind of reverse it a little bit and go, you're better off having success if you aim at a much more emotional level and a connection with somebody. There is so much delight in the smaller films that aren't even on the radar, like on I'm a member of the European Film Academy, and there's now this MUBI, there's all sorts of outlets where there's stuff to view, but there are so many, to me, far more interesting material out there that's being made. And I would much prefer to be allied with that. And Flora kind of comes in. We made this film independently. It didn't have a distributor or a studio behind it when we made it. It's a much more liberating space to play in rather than the shiny big budgets. You know, to me, it's all about happiness, and it's about just trying to find an area where you can be content and exercise your creativity without too much hassle. You know, so it's
makes so much sense. So much sense. Something that I say to our students often is not to pursue success, to pursue satisfaction. Like, what's going to bring you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you have to take that old school, that cliched idea of looking back when you're older and go, what did you do, and did you have fun doing it? You know, and we're creative folks, and you like to make things and to make it in a space that's conducive to it with people who are like-minded. We're storytellers. We're sitting around a fire at nighttime telling each other stories, except the fire is a cinema and there's a lot more money and there's a lot more people. Try and keep enjoying that and keep that spirit of that alive, and it's precious. And it's about storytelling, it's about entertaining, and it's about trying to reflect onto people some little bit of their life that adds a little bit of meaning, adding a little bit of something to people's lives where they might actually understand something a little bit better about themselves or about the world.
I love the spirit with which you think about your work. So, Steve, thank you so much. There's a link below this video to check out Flora Son. Really a beautiful, beautiful, fresh, funny, cheeky film. Wonderful love story, great music. Thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
Well, it's like, because this connects with what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
John's philosophy about the music in this compared to other musicals is these are imperfect people making imperfect songs. They're about people struggling to communicate when you're in a tight spot, or when you're trying to relate the human condition to somebody and you can't use regular words or conversation. It's that struggle that we all go through, that the world is going through. There's a very funny scene where Jack Rayner's character comes over to what we call the listening party to hear the son, his rap song. Everybody has left, and he asks Eve Hewson to play a song that she's been learning, and she says, "Oh, okay." She kind of twists her arm to perform, and she does a piss take of a kind of a Spanish guitar and slags his current girlfriend. I mean, that was written the night before, and you know, we cut an entire. We just didn't shoot the scene that was supposed to be shot that morning, because the night before he said, "No, this is maybe more appropriate."
Oh wow!
So
it's such a great scene.
That's all about just trusting your gut feeling. And what's even more interesting is we cut that scene out. It was on the floor. We just went. It just didn't work, and then we put it back in about 3 or 4 days before locking the picture, and it's almost like one of the kind of missing pieces of the jigsaw. We can't imagine a film without it.
There.
And that's just about, so he was right all along to trust himself, to not shoot the scene that we were supposed to shoot. That's the definition of being open and giving in to your instincts and trust again.
All right. Thanks again, Steve. You've subscribed to my channel. You love these videos. It's time for that 90-minute masterclass where I help you eliminate writing blocks and arrive at your best screenplays. Join me at theindependentfilmschool.com. Link is below, and I'll invite you to my training. It is absolutely free. I'll see you there.